Hello, everyone. Welcome to Bible Quest. We're so glad you're able to join us on this Thursday evening. If you're watching us on YouTube, please use the comment section and give us your feedback and your comments. Respond. We want you to respond to us. Or you can go to BibleQuest.org at any time and use the form there to reach out and let us know what you're thinking. How you doing, Carl?
Thanks for asking. I'm doing great, Drew. It's good to see you guys again tonight, and always glad to be here with you.
Great. Good to see you. And Kenny, good to see you too. In fact, what are you going to be talking about tonight? Are we picking up something that we started last week?
You got it. Yeah, we're going to pick up and hopefully finish up here on the thought of predestination. You know, we were talking last time, the last couple, I think we did two sessions on this, but, you know, talking about, is predestination a biblical concept? And we said, yes, it is. You know, some people just stay away from it, say, no, it's not. We have free will. There's no predestination. Others will say there's unconditional election. We talked about that the last time, and that's that, and that you have no choice over it in the matter. But I think what we showed with Scripture is that God, you know, there's no impartiality. He's no respecter of persons. And we looked at that and gave some Scripture, so you can always go back to look at that. But I think tonight we can kind of sum this up, because the final argument is going to be, well, okay, you say you have a choice, but how does that play with God's sovereignty? How could free will and God's sovereignty go together? And I think
in fact, I recall having a conversation with a fellow having a class. He said, and let's see if I'm identifying what you're talking about. If I claim I have free will, then that takes away from God's power and sovereignty, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's unpack that.
Yeah. So typical we'll say it's almost like a challenge just to try to get you to retreat on what you're saying, but you're saying God's not sovereign, so he doesn't know who's predestined from the beginning of the world. He doesn't know who's going to be saved. That's what the claim's going to be. They're saying that we're taking away, by saying that we have free will, that you're taking away his sovereignty.
Well, wait a minute. If I have free will, that doesn't mean God doesn't know which way I'm going to choose.
That's as basic as you could put it, right? That doesn't mean if anything, in my opinion, it makes him more sovereign. That the fact that he can give me free will, he's made a predestined way, he's set the way, that's his sovereignty. He's made.
Wait a minute. Now, see, he made a predestined way, so he predestined me to make a choice. That's not what you're saying, is it?
No, I have free will within that.
So I think we did talk about it in the last one or two sessions. I want to make it clear if someone didn't hear that. The predestination, or the predestined, what he predestined, Carl, you had used the term for that.
Yeah,
what did he predestine?
He predestined the mechanism, the mechanics of how it would work. He's the one who set up the way that those who would be saved, but not each individual. He didn't handpick each one. He chose a gospel that would reach the hearts and allow people to choose if they're going to respond or in obedience or not. Otherwise, they're just some nonsensical statements. When he accuses people of choosing not to believe, they didn't really choose not to believe. He forced them not to believe. It puts God in a really, really bad situation, in a bad light, to say that he caused people to be condemned. That is not the point at all. That God's desire is their salvation. So he predestined a way that people could come into that salvation, and he called them by his gospel. That's how Paul declares it in Thessalonians.
That's right. And the way is Jesus Christ. So he predestined the system through his son Jesus, not individuals. Okay, now I got that straight, because you used that term twice, Kenny. I want to make sure that I wasn't misunderstanding what you were saying.
Yeah, no, that's good to clear that up too. But to me, it's, if you're going to say it's unconditional election, that he's sovereign, we're just game pieces that he's playing with, like that. Like Carl said, that's not the God. That's not God. That's putting him in a box that isn't him. That I just don't. And to me, it takes away from his providence. Where's the providence then? And that negates. I was thinking Romans 8:28, and we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. How could he work all things together through anything if it's all predestined? He doesn't need to work anything. He's picked me. Nothing
Oh,
matters.
yeah. It's like he's already selected you from the beginning. You're the guy, not you, Carl, just Kenny, and he just sits back and doesn't have to worry about a thing. He doesn't do anything. But then, yeah, that doesn't make any sense at all. Well,
And what
just
was
because
even
it doesn't make sense doesn't mean it's not true. That's not true because that contradicts everything else in the scriptures.
right? And the logical point of that, what sense does it make to create? If you're going to pick someone, why don't you just create them? Why create? You know,
Yeah. I'm going to go back to the sovereign point again, because they say if you choose to do something that takes away God's sovereignty, well, we live under the sovereignty of the nation. We're in the United States of America. Does the country as a whole, with its laws, have sovereign over its citizens? Right? They have laws. You can't break this law. You can't go rob a bank. That's the sovereignty. That's part of it. But if I choose to go rob a bank, does that mean that takes away their sovereignty? No, they still have the sovereignty. I just violated it. So I'm
Right.
going to face the punishment of their sovereignty. Does that help explain a little bit? Or
absolutely.
is that a poor illustration? You can tell me it's a poor illustration.
I think it's dead on. That illustration made me think of, we were talking about this way back before this is last time we did the sessions, but the analogy of the airplane, right? That illustration. So airlines predestine where their flights are going to go, right? They don't predestine who's going to be on that flight, but that flight's set to go to Florida. Well, there's conditions that have to be met. You need to get your ticket. You need to board the plane to travel, right? There's choices we have to make, but that plane was predestined to go there. That's the group. That's no different than, right, the church. The church is predestined. There's conditions to be added to the church.
In fact, they call it a flight plan.
Right.
Before it takes off, they got to have a flight plan.
Yeah.
So what we're looking at in all of this is a God who foreknows everything. And so certainly he's omniscient. He has all the power to make things work the way he wants them to work. But in his love and his desire for our love, he grants us free will. We're not automatons. We're not robots that have to do what he says. We get to choose. And one of the things I think is the strongest argument that we see this in the scripture is, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. There's a choice to be made. And if we choose not to keep his commandments, we're showing we don't love him. We made that decision by choosing not to keep his commandments. It's an easy dodge to say, I had no choice in the matter. God made me or didn't make me for this. But the truth of the matter is, I've made a decision. The philosophers who have been most honest about that have come through and said, I didn't want to believe in a God. That's why I created an atheistic or an all-knowing God who just predestined everything to the trash heap. But I chose not to want a God in my life because I want to be in control. Doesn't mean you are. It means you just ignore the fact that God is. But the choice is still yours. And so if you have no choice, you cannot love. Love is a decision that's made on our part. We're going to serve someone besides ourselves. And that is really what's at back of our own free will, is the choice to be able to love God and to serve him because we choose to, rather than choosing what the world offers. And that's the example we get through the Old Testament over and over. Moses chose the reproach of God's people over the riches of Egypt. That's the choice that he made. And we see that example. Hebrews 11 and other places just point those out over and over. People that chose to serve God over themselves.
When you said the Old Testament was choosing, Joshua at the end of his life, the land is now theirs, Canaan. And he says, you want to go back and worship the gods of Egypt, or you want to go worship the gods of this land? Who are you going to choose? Mm-hmm. You can choose. That's what he said. I'm paraphrasing. Joshua 24, right towards the end.
24:15, yes.
15. And he says, but for me and my family, we're going to serve God. That's a choice. God didn't force him to do that. God didn't predestine him to do it. And I like when you said about what Jesus said, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. That's a big word, that word if. That means I can choose. Isn't that? I mean, how else can that be explained away?
And it's
Curious to know if anyone in the audience has the opposite of view of what we're claiming the scriptures is teaching. How do you explain away the word "if" when Jesus said, "If you love me, you'll keep me"? Doesn't that tell me I have free will? I just want an answer to that question.
Mhm. And really, Paul's argument in Romans 1 about why the wrath of God is revealed against men have made a choice. They have suppressed the truth in unrighteousness. Romans 1:18 says that's a choice to do that. What may be known of God is manifest, for God has shown it, but they have chosen not to retain God in their knowledge, it says. And so they exchanged the truth of God for a lie. They worshiped and served the creature rather than the creator. All of these are words that depict a choice that's been made by people who claim somehow to be serving God, but what they've done in the end is rejected him. They have not kept him. And so they've served something else. But that, again, it contradicts scripture to say that we have no choice in the matter. Romans 1 clearly lays out choices that have been made and the reason why God's upset with those who chose to reject him.
right.
Well, in fact, he said they're without excuse.
Right.
They rejected him. They have the evidence of creation, and they're without excuse. It's just there's scriptures after scriptures tells us we have free will.
Yeah. If statements alone, that's a conditional.
Yeah. Ask any programmer. If
That's
this
right.
and that, right?
I was just teaching that today at school.
Anyone who studies logic, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. All right. Guys, I appreciate that. Do you have anything else you want to add to that, Kenny, Carl?
No, sir, I think that's got
No,
it.
I think that.
We don't want to beat that horse. We don't want to. If you're in the audience and you want to give us an opinion that is the opposite that, come to us and show us the scriptures. That's what we want. And if the scripture says it, we accept what the scripture says. All right. Thank you, guys. Look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great evening.
God bless.
Bye-bye.